Hi, I'm Paul Brodie. We are in my shop. Mitch is behind the camera, and welcome. I've been thinking about a Romax. I think I'm going to build myself a Romax frame. Romax was the first model we ever made, and I was looking through my notes yesterday and I found out some interesting stuff that I will let you know as we go. So in these books here, these are some of the books where I used to keep track of all the frames I made, and this starts with number 1 when I was working for Rocky, so you can see that there's some Rocky Mountain work orders in here, and then it goes on. And I left Rocky, I made 113 frames for them, and then so I started on my own at 114. And the first Romax, I looked it up. I went through each of these books. I have a total of 4 books. Frame number 131 was the first Romax, and that was in August of '86. And we made a bunch of frames, a bunch of Romax frames, almost 400 of them. And I decided that I'm gonna make myself a Romax frame. So today we're gonna do a full-scale drawing. I'll show you how that works. In Frame Building 101, every student makes a full-scale drawing, and this is how we do it. We take 4 pieces of Bristol board. I need to line up the edges accurately. Then I take inch-wide masking tape. You can be messy or you can be really neat. I like to do a good job. So that's one. I've got these little tags here. These are the barcodes. So when the masking tape goes on, it's the bottom. So I've got the barcode on the bottom. When I flip it over, don't have the barcode anymore. So I've got one extra piece, and this piece, it gets cut horizontally, and then it goes up on the top. So I'll position these about halfway. So I'm going to have a gap on each side, but that doesn't matter. I like the Bristol board because it's got a little bit of weight to it. It's not flimsy paper. You can erase on it and it's not going to bunch up on you. So there we go. We've got a start of a drawing. I take a ruler, I line it up with the bottom. This is the ground line. I don't want the ground line to be right on the very bottom. I want it to be up just a little bit. So make a line. Got HB pencils. I sharpen them outside on the belt sander. That's the ground line. Next, we want to do a horizontal axle line. Okay, here's a wheel. It's a 26-inch wheel. Yes, I know it's obsolete, but a Romax was made back in '86, so that's all we had back then. So what I want to do is I want to hold this so that it's in balance, and then I can measure the axle, and it's 13¼ inches. I'm going to make 3 marks. I'm going to go up from my ground line, 13¼ same and same, and then I join that line. So that line goes across the entire drawing. On these drawings, you have to make sure you have them as accurately as possible. And it's good to have someone else look at the drawing, make sure that all your measurements are right. If I'm teaching Frame Building 101, very few students go through the process and get every measurement right. That's what this thing's for. It's an eraser. So the next thing I want to do is a vertical axle line. And that's for the front axle. So I'm going to offset this edge 100 millimeters. It's kind of arbitrary, but you'll see in a little bit why I chose 100. On some frames, when the head angle gets really slack, you might want more than 100 because that's where the trail is going to be calculated, right down here. If you don't have enough room, you can't calculate what the trail is. That's your vertical axle line. This is your horizontal axle line. So right here at the intersection point is the front axle. Now on the Romax, I was telling you how it changed the head tube angle. Up to a certain frame number, it was 69 degrees, and then after frame, I think it was 240 or something, I can check, we increased the head angle up to 70.5. So my choice for my bike is 70.5. Trying to be as accurate as possible. There's the 70. That's my 70.5, right in between the two lines there. So that's my head tube angle. So now we have to work on the fork. So I do have a fork. It's a Unicrown fork. I know the guy that made this. So the offset is 1 3/4, which is pretty standard, or 45 millimeters. So we have to mark in where the 45 millimeters is. This is kind of a tough one for students, and I get them thinking. I say, well, so is it this side or is it that side? And sometimes they can't figure it out. And if you put a fork here, this is the axle, right? So if you put that, that should tell you which way you offset it. You're not going to offset it this way. That doesn't make sense at all. You put the offset in behind 45 millimeters. So next thing I do is ask the students, so how are you going to offset? You're going to offset along the axle line, and some say yes. And I say, really? Because you need to offset it in a perpendicular line. If you do it like that, you get a false reading. So let's mark in 45. There's 45, and there's 45. Now I take my big ruler again. This is the line where we're going to actually draw the head tube onto. So I'm drawing this line right down to the ground line. So I've got a rod which is almost the size of the axle. It's just a little bit smaller. So I'm going to measure from the crown race. This is what I call the crown race. I'm going back to the axle, and it's 395 millimeters. See right there, 395. On this measurement, what makes it hard for some people to figure out is that we are crossing lines. We don't go from, some students want to do this, and they go, okay, I got 395, but no, it's got to be on this line, and so then they measure from here. But you are crossing lines. You're going from the axle over to the head tube line. So 395 is right there. So that is the axle up to the crown. There we go. That's the crown race right there. So I want to draw the head tube up here, but I need to put something in between there. That's called the stack height. I got a Velo orange headset here, which is really shiny. So here's the part that goes onto the fork, right? So the measurement from here to here, that is called the stack height. It's 12 millimeters. That was the standard for years and years. So that is the stack height. So that there is the bottom of the head tube now. That's where the head tube starts. If you don't get this spacing right, your head tube's in the wrong place. That's not good. So my head tube is going to be 188 millimeters. So there's 188 right there. Just going to make a light mark because I'm going to have to knock it off. So here's Here's a 1-inch head tube. It's a 1.5 millimeter wall, which is heavy. I'm going to measure the OD, and it's 1.3. So a little trick is to take half of 1.3, which is 650. So I set the caliper on 650, and then I don't have to measure anymore. I just put the caliper there. I make a mark. I'm usually thinking about ways to make things faster or do things faster. So that's going to be my head tube now. Here we go. And if I take an eraser, I can knock off the extra lines. I'm going to make a couple marks on the back of the head tube. I'm going to go up a 1/4 inch. And that's where the down tube is going to go to. And the 1/4 inch is for the fillet brazing. You always have to leave room for the fillet brazing. And on the top tube, I need a 1/4 inch there as well. Just like that. We're going to draw in now the height of the bottom bracket. You can also do the drop, but I know what I want. I want 11 5/8. That's interesting. There's a mark on my ruler, red pen, 11 5/8. I don't know when that mark went there, but so we don't have to mark the whole way across. We just need to mark from, say, here to here. 11 5/8. So that is the bottom bracket now. The bottom bracket height. We just haven't figured out where the bottom bracket goes. I've checked my measurements and I know my front center. So in bicycle terminology, when you measure from the front axle to the bottom bracket, it's called the front center. And we also go from one line, we go from the axle line onto the drop line. This is the drop of the bottom bracket. So it's 26 1/8. Do you see how I'm going from the axle line to the bottom bracket line? So that's where I want my bottom bracket to be. I'm just making it the same as what I used to make. So I'm going to make a line like that. 1.5 inch bottom bracket, standard, 68 millimeters. Here's my bottom bracket. So I'm just going to check my down tube, and if you look at that, it's just long enough. So next on the list, we're going to draw the seat tube in. So I do the same thing again. I take my protractor. The angle of a seat tubes on all the bikes we used to make for a long time is 74. So this is the center of the seat tube, like that. So the frame size I'm going to make is a 21. That was the standard size back then. So how you measure that is from the center of the bottom bracket to the top of the seat tube. There we go. That's the top of the seat tube. In the photo here, it's the Romax that I used to own back in 87 about. I think it was about 87, and so you can see here, and if you look at this one here, you can see the seat extension. It's a 6-inch long. So when we were making frames back then, we started out with a 6-inch extension, and then we went to a 4-inch extension. So I'm going to put the 6-inch extension onto my frame, and it's going to have U-brake bosses on the seat stays, and that's the pump peg that's made out of 2 nails. I want to show you a different frame I got in the shop here. So this is a Romax frame which came into the shop. It's got a wrinkle in the down tube. Can you see the wrinkle there? It's had an impact. So it needs a new head tube and a down tube. And this is Romax number 258. It's not mine, it belongs to somebody else. And this one here, I want to show you this because this is the short extension here. This is the 4-inch extension. That's one style we made, and this is the 6-inch extension. Here's the 6 inches of the extension. Okay, so I'm going to make a mark right there, and then it comes up a couple inches here like that. So I'm going to draw in the extension, and then we know where the top tube is going to go because the top tube is going to go in between that. So it's 1.25 inches, so it's 5/8 each side. I'm just lining this up by hand, by eye, I mean. So there's 1.25 inches, and then I do the same thing here. So I can join these up, like that. So that's 3/4 like that. I'll do the same thing again, center on 5/8, and then draw to 1.25 inches. So I'm showing you basically what the extension is going to look like. It's a piece of chromoly tubing. It's 095 wall. It gets machined like so. That's what the extension is going to look like, and the pinch lug is going to go on the front. It's going to be an old style pinch lug. So I'll draw the rest of the seat tube in. I need to go 1 1/8 tubing, so 9/16 on each side. It'll drive the metric people nutty, but that's okay. So that's the seat tube right there. Okay, so the top tube is 1 1/8 inches. So there's the center right there, that's 1 inch. So we go up 9/16 right there, and we draw a line. Remember here I went 1/4 inch down? That's where I'm connecting to. So now you're going to see what the frame is going to look like. It's going to start to take shape on the drawing. So I have to draw a mark here for 1 1/8 inches. Here's my 1 1/8 inches. And I'll also come back here, 1 1/8 inches. I'm kind of out of doing a lot of reaching here, but I got long arms. That's the top tube. So on the down tube now, it's 1.25 inches, and this is 1.5 inches a bottom bracket shell. So if I go in, I'm just eyeballing here, 1/8 of an inch on each side. There's my mark. I go to the 1/8 in. And I'll offset this 1.25 inches. I'll join up my line. So you can see here how it's, you know, something has to happen here. And what I do is I put the down tube on first. I know a lot of frame builders don't. So I usually ask my students, I say, of the two tubes, the down tube and the seat tube going onto the bottom bracket, which is the most crucial in terms of strength? And the student thinks about it a bit, and you can think about it a bit. And every student has said the down tube. So one of these tubes has to have a notch. So I always notch the seat tube, because I want the down tube to have full contact on the bottom bracket. That's what I like to do. So the down tube is nickel silvered onto the bottom bracket first. The seat tube gets notched. What we're going to do now, because we have all these tubes drawn, we're going to figure out the angle of the miter. I'm going to come around to the other side. So I'm lining it up like that. I'm also lining up the 90 and the 270. That's as accurate as I can make it. It's 1 degree. Can you see how it's off 1 degree? So it's going, you also have to figure out which way it's going. So I'm going to make a little line like this. That shows me that it's not, oops, it's not angling that way. The tube is angling that way. And I write it in. I put M 1 degree. That means miter 1 degree. So we line up like that. Oh, it's 23.5 degrees. Can you see that? So I'll make my mark, M23.5. And then we have to do the seat tube as well. It's 2 degrees. And it's going that way, isn't it? Because there's the 0. Comes that way. So this one's going like that. What I like about the full-scale drawing is that I can take measurements right off here if I'm mitering, for example. And then when I get the frame out of the jig and it's tacked up, I can put the frame right on top and I can see how I'm doing. If you don't have a full-scale drawing, you can't do that. Next thing we're doing here is the chainstay length. And the chainstay length back in the day was 17.25 inches. On the chainstay length, you're also crossing lines. You're going from the bottom bracket center up to the axle line. So once again, you're not measuring along a line, you are crossing a line. So here we go. I've got the end of the ruler on there. There's 17.25 right there. So I don't have a dropout I can trace. I've ordered some old Shimano dropouts off eBay. They haven't arrived yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this frame here because this is the same style of dropout. Old Shimano. And see this part here, how it's straight? That needs to angle to where I want it. So I want that to go to there because it's a little bit of, see here how the seat stays are above the top tube? That's what I want. I want that style. That's what I like. So now I can trace. Open the door. There we go, a Shimano dropout. So I'm going to draw a line now from the center of the bottom bracket to the center of the axle, and there's a reason why. There we go. I'm going to offset off that line I just drew at a right angle. I'm going to draw a top view of the chainstays because I need to know how to space the chainstays. I need to know how wide my tire is, all that kind of stuff. So I've got my right angle here. So I'm coming off at a right angle to the chainstay line. It's important. So I'm going to offset an arbitrary amount, and I usually do something like 150 millimeters. It doesn't really matter as long as you have space for what you want to do. So there's 150, 150. I connect the dots. So that is going to be the top view of the chainstay. So the next thing I want to do, I'm going to draw in the bottom bracket shell here. So it's 68 millimeters wide, so I go half, I go 34, and then I go 68. I'm just eyeballing here. And the bottom bracket shell is 1.5 inches around, so I go 3/4, and I go 3/4. So that's the bottom bracket shell. Here, I'll make this a little stronger here. We'll erase those extra lines. It's a top view. It's nothing, there's no rocket science. So at the back now, we need, the spacing is 135, so half of 135 is 67.5. So we go 67.5, and we go 135 right there. What I'm drawing in is the top view of the dropout. And I'm just drawing this, I'm not making the line really strong. So I need to measure how thick the dropout is. It's probably something like 1/4 inch. Okay, wrong side, I caught that. Almost made a mistake. And the dropout comes to about there, approximately. So if I make a line down like that, so that is the top view of the dropout. So the next thing we have to draw is the tire. So we know from the axle to the center line, it's 13.25 inches. That is the top of the tire right there. I'm going to show you how to make up a template of your tire, because you really need to know how big your tire is. I have some cardboard here. What I want to show you is, this is from Framebuilding 101. This is what the students did over the years. And I usually got them to write on what kind of a tire it was and the width. So you can see here, look at all the different sizes. Look, a fat bike. So many tires, all different sizes and shapes. So I'm going to show you how we make one of these. So I got some card here. It doesn't take that long. You need a pair of scissors, some Bristol board. So I fold it in half like that. So there we go. We're at it's 2 1/8. So if I go half of that, it's 2.123. So I'll go 1.065. So I start right there. So I go up like that. And I'm gonna look at my tire, see what I got here. So I got, okay, I'm just looking at the radius. See how close I can get. That looks like a good fit. So I put that like that. I'm lining up the crease with the center line of the tire. So there's my tire. Oops. On the fillet brazing, remember up on the head tube, we went in 1/4 inch each side. So we'll do the same thing here. We'll go in. You don't need to draw both sides because it's symmetrical. You just need to draw one side. When you miter this part of the chainstay, I can probably show you on this other frame. See on the chainstay here where it hits the dropout? Do you see how much offset there is here? And do you see how much offset there is here? There's a lot more offset going out than on the inside. So when I draw the chainstay, I have to keep that in mind. I need it to not be centered on the dropout. It needs to be more outside. It leaves more room for the hub and whatever else needs to go in there. Okay, we need to talk about where we're gonna have the chainstay. So if I hold it like that, so that this angle is more or less matching that angle, in the middle, I call that the apex of the bend. So I put a line right there. That's going to be on the widest point of the tire. That's what looks best. The chainstay is going to come close here, and then it can stick out farther on the other side. I put the red next to there, and what I can do now is I can trace. And if I transfer my hand, okay, so it's not perfect. I wanted this to be out a little bit, but you get the idea. I got the 1/4 inch for the fillet brazing. I got tire clearance. I like to have at least 1/4 inch. I don't want to go huge, but what I'm going to do is to match the seat stays to that same space. It doesn't look good if you got a 1/2 inch space on the bottom and a 1/4 inch on the top or whatever. It's nice to have the same space. That's good. So there we go. That's the chainstay done. So what we're going to do now is to do a top view. We're going to draw in a top view of the seat stays. So I'm going to take the center line here. I'm going to take the center line of the dropout right there where the seat stay goes. I'm not going back here to the center line of the axle, center line of the dropout. And then it comes up here and it's going to be moved up a bit. So that is going to be my center line. I'm going to say to right there. It's my center line. So now I need to offset. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to line up with this, and I'm going to line up with the center of the axle. And I'm going to make a mark like that. On this one here, when I offset for the 135 spacing, I started in the center line of the axle. Here I'm starting on the center line of the seat stay. I'll measure my 150 from the center line of the seat stay, not from the axle. So I use 150 again, but it's kind of arbitrary. It could be 160, 163, whatever you want. So this is the center line of the seat stays, like that. So here's the seat tube. This is 1.25 inches. So I grab my 1.25 inches. There's my seat tube. This is the top view. I'm going to draw the axle in. I only really have to draw one side. So half of 135 is 67.5. And then we're going to have the, okay, so I'd say the dropout comes up to about right there, like that. That's the top view of the dropout. Now we want to draw in the tire. So it's the same as here. We measure up whatever size of tire you've got. This one is 13.25, so I've got it right there. So I got the crease lined up with the center, and there is my tire, like that. So I'm checking down here and I'm seeing that I've got this much space. Remember just a few moments ago we talked about having the same space. I'm going to draw it over here. So there is that's where the inside of the seat stay is gonna go. So I've got the same space. Now I want you to look at the frame here. Do you see how the seat stays is a little bit proud of the seat tube? That's what I like. There's a little bit of a gap there, and when I'm putting on the nickel silver to hold the seat stay onto the seat tube extension, I nickel silver around, and there's like a little porthole here, and I can get extra braze inside through that porthole. And I just like how it's squared off. So you have to add an extra 1.5 millimeters about. So let's do that on the drawing. So I'm going to come down like that. So there's my 1.5 millimeters about, like that. So the seat stays are, let me use my little ruler. Seat stays are 16 millimeters or 5/8. So we'll go like that. So that's the inside right there. So if I connect this with that, and then I come down here, this isn't going to be 5/8 down here, it's going to be narrower, so. But this goes into the middle. It's not offset like on the chainstay. And then I'll also go 5/8 of an inch here. So when I'm bending seat stays, I bend the seat stays to match what I got on the drawing here. And then I know that I've got the spacing right. There's a lot of little details when you're building a frame. I guess you're appreciating that. There you go, and then this will scoop in fillet brazing. We need to figure out the angle here of the miter, and we always come off the 0. If you come up from here, you get a false reading, because the mill head, when the mill is straight up and down, it's at 0. So that's how much you angle the mill head. That's why you do it off the 0. So 10, 20, 30, 31.5. So M, 31.5. So there we go. We've got most of the angles all drawn in for what we need. That's basically how we do a full-scale drawing. So I hope you enjoyed that. In a few weeks from now, we're going to build a frame. I still need a few parts, but thank you for watching. Enjoy your day. Stay safe. Take care.